Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. I'm sitting here in our bedroom studio, which is quite exciting actually to use this, and we're going to try out a new plugin which has been out, I think actually now for a week or two, and seems to be rather popular, so we thought we would try it out. That is Wave's new plugin, the BB Tubes, or as we would say in America, BB Tubes. Yeah, tubes and tubes. Now, I watched Joe Ciccarelli demonstrating it, and of course, who's not a big fan of Joe Ciccarelli? He's one of the greatest engineers, producers, and mixers in the world. Huge fan of him. And he was using it on a mix bus. So I thought I might try that first. So the first thing is it has a setting here to make it bigger. 150. Oh, there you go. So let's get it on that side there. What controls do we have? Sensitivity. I presume that's because it's a saturation, because on the beauty side here, I know it's like adds harmonics, but not a great deal of distortion. The B side is, well, as you can see here, saturation. So the sensitivity would obviously be where that happens, where that starts to saturate, add harmonics, etc. I see it has a transformer on and off. Now, what we like about transformers, those of you that have used equipment with transformers, is it always seems to give a little extra bit of weight, sometimes called warmth. I'm going to avoid that word, but weight. To me, it's like a little bit of lows, that kind of a bump, a thickness. You know, when you're using consoles in particular, you would put your mix back through them and you just seem to get a little bit more weight across the whole mix. Everything just sounds a bit fatter. Feels like it's a bit, I'm going to say warmer. It's got a bit more lows in it. So there's a transformer emulation obviously built into it. I don't know what the type A and type B is, but I presume it's two different modes of the beast, which is the more audible saturation. It looks like you have a tone control pre and post. There is a bass relief here, which I imagine is a high pass filter. And of course, there's a mix control, which I love about all plugins here. So you can go absolutely nuts and then dial it back. And then there's an in out here. So we can use that for level adjustment on the mix. So at the moment, none of the controls are doing anything. Let's have a listen.
I can't escape the thought that you're not here. It was pointed at the sky, just waiting for the battle cry. I can't escape the thought that you're not here.
So interesting enough, it's indicating saturation.
I can't escape the thought that you're not here. It was pointed at the sky, just waiting for the battle cry.
So I'm going to dial in the beauty, which would be, this is on the overall mix. And like I said, this is not something I typically do, but we've got the transformer on, and I think that that's adding some weight regardless. So you can hear just a little bit more in the low end. Before we touch anything, let's turn the transformer on and off.
I can't escape the thought that you're not here.
That's not even subtle. That's huge. Listen to the bass. That's me banging away on my jazz bass. Have a listen to it, and with the transformer on and off. Is it off?
I can't escape the thought that you're not here.
Same section with it on.
I can't escape the thought that you're not here.
Yeah, the kick and the bass just seem to be doing something. So that's interesting. So don't be fooled. Everything's sort of like, looks like it's turned off. It's not, because obviously the transformer does quite a lot. So I'm going to leave that on. Let's add the beauty control. Now, obviously the sensitivity, because it's on a master bus, so it's getting hit pretty hard. Have a look at the light.
I can't escape.
You see it flicking red a lot. So obviously you could turn that down on a master bus if you didn't want to hit it so hard. But let's keep going. Let's add the beauty.
I can't escape the thought that you're not here. It was pointed at the sky, just waiting for the battle cry. I can't escape the thought that you're not here. It was pointed at the sky, just
When I saw Joe demoing it on the Master Bus, I can see why he likes it. Joe's one of my favorite producers, engineers, and mixers. This is exciting on the Beauty. I don't know if I'd have the Beast going, or any need for it on this. Having said that, it's hitting pretty hard. I mean, I can really hear how it's gluing things together in a really beautiful way. Have a listen again. I've brought down the output so the gain matching's pretty close, and then I'll bypass in and out. You can have a listen.
It was pointed at the sky, just waiting for the battle cries. Stop and take a second to breathe.
That is a huge difference. Now, you might not want that, but what it did is it took the synths and the guitars and just meshed them together. There was a hair, harmonics and stuff happening on that. It's not even subtle. I mean, I can bring the Beauty control down, see if we can find a balance, but it's interesting. It makes that guitar sound and that synth sound one sound. And there's plenty of times I want that. There's plenty of times I don't want that, but often in production, like heavy guitars, you put piano octaves, like low piano octaves behind it to try and give the guitar a bit of definition. And then you find a point where the piano isn't so loud that it affects the way you hear the guitars. I feel like now I could use this with the piano and the guitars blended together, get the piano up so it's toughening it up, but audible, then apply this afterwards and it will sink it back in to the guitar sound a bit more. Have a listen. I'll play like half the chorus with it off and then half of the chorus with it on, and listen to what it's doing with the guitars and the keyboards, which are playing that same part.
It was pointed at the sky, just waiting for the battle cries. Stop and take a second to breathe. It was pointed at the sky, just waiting for the battle cries.
It's making everything more exciting. Probably what a lot of great mastering engineers do when they're using a huge analog chain. I'm sure you're aware when you've watched a lot of videos we've done with mastering engineers, is that quite often they're barely doing anything. They're just going through the transformers and the individual pieces of equipment. And that can be anywhere from like 2 or 3 pieces to sometimes 5 or 6 or 7 pieces that it's going through. But the difference between the before and the after is pretty massive. Although it's not so colored, it just tends to add like hair and thickness, you know, like we're getting from that transformer. So let's go to Lily's vocal.
Shout all you want about angels, I haven't met one yet.
Now, I was using a distortion on this. It was the lo-fi distortion, which is very typical for me. We can take her whole vocal, and I'm going to bust them to 1.
Shout all you want about angels, I haven't met one yet. It's been the end for ages, I'll just ride this one out. What's the hurry to leave Earth about? I can't escape the thought that you're not here. It was pointed at the sky, just waiting for the battle cries. Stop and take a second to breathe. Shout all you want about angels, I haven't met one yet.
It really does bring it forward, doesn't it? Gives it quite a lot of hair in a really tasteful way. Let's overdrive it with the beast mode here.
Shout all you want about angels, I haven't met one yet. It's been the end for ages.
See, what I love about her voice is I love that that kind of cry into it. It gives it so much passion. I love now with the Beauty and now with the Beast, which is obviously driving it a lot harder, like really audible distortion, saturation, as it were. Now it's exaggerating those inflections.
Shout all you want about angels, I haven't met one yet. It's been the end for ages, I'll just ride.
Now it gets a little bit too crazy there. Let's go to the type B.
Shout all you want about angels. I haven't met one yet.
That's more pleasing in that area. What I'll do now is I'm going to use the wet dry and I'm going to bring it down so it's not quite so crazy.
Shout all you want about angels. I haven't met one yet. It's been the end
Bypass.
for ages. I'll just ride this one out. What's the hurry to leave Earth about? Shout all you want about angels. I haven't met one yet.
This is going to get used on a lot of records for vocals because there's some nice bouncing here. I mean, look, they've gone out of their way to make this graphic look really super analog and vintage. I mean, they're selling it from that perspective, but it makes sense because isn't that really what people are trying to emulate? They're trying to get that same sound that, you know, when we were tracking on tape with tube microphones, with valve microphones going through, you know, mic pre's that either were tube themselves or at least had tons of massive transformers in them, going into a compressor, which also had transformers and sometimes tubes, going onto tape, which is being hit really hard, and then monitoring back through a console and going back through all the line amps and all of the transformers and everything. They've got a transformer in it, they've got some tube emulation, they're adding harmonics, and they're also adding saturation. I do like that type B better on her vocal, and I've enjoyed bringing this wet dry down a little bit and making it not quite so strong. Let's mess with the sensitivity just for schnizzle.
Shout all you want about angels. I haven't met one yet. It's been the end for ages. I'll just ride this.
Yeah, you've got 5 different ways of balancing it. Obviously, the sensitivity, you can increase how early it happens, you know, or you can increase the, you know, effect here and here. Obviously, what's good about the sensitivity is if you like the balance between the beauty and the beast, like I have it here, I can drive it harder with those same settings. Or you can individually boost the beauty and then you just might not get the same ratio. So that's interesting. I often hit things super, super hard and then use the wet dry here. I'm going to go back to 100% wet, bring these two down a little bit because I want to keep the transformer effect on the whole time. Obviously, if I'm going to bring the wet down, I'm not going to get that extra warmth that's being added by the transformer.
Shout all you want about angels. I haven't met one yet. It's been the end for ages. I'll just ride this one out. What's the hurry to leave Earth about? I can't escape the thought that you're not here. It was pointed at the sky, just waiting for the battle cries. Stop and take a second to breathe, to breathe, to breathe. Shout all you want about angels. I haven't met one yet. It's been the end.
Yes, it's pretty fantastic on vocals. Pretty fantastic. Let's have some fun with it. So here's the drums. So there's a ringing snare. Let's see if we can find that. Where's that ringing snare? Okay, so on the ringing snare, I already used lo-fi to try and saturate that transient. If I turn it off. So what's nice about that, using saturation on a snare like that, is it's taking an initial transient and saturating it. Fantastic. So I'm just going to reach for the beast mode immediately. Transformers making a huge difference. Okay, so let's hear it in and out in the mix now. I can see this as a saturation tool being used a lot. I suppose the obvious thing is you're probably all thinking the same thing as me. It's just how many instances can I open up on this? 26 instances.
Pointed at the sky. Just wait.
They've obviously all defaulted to just having a transformer on. A lot of people like using transformers on their mix. There's a very successful plugin that's just a transformer. At least it says it's a transformer. I think it's a form of saturation that lots of people use. This is a transformer and saturation. So
It was pointed at the sky. Just waiting for the battle cries.
So 26 instances running totally smoothly. So let's go over and speak to our good friend, Mr. Matt Lange. And also we have Adam Steele. Both of them will be demonstrating this as well.
Hey folks, Matt Lange here. It's pretty chilly in LA right now, so let's try to warm some things up with the new Saturator from Waves, BB Tubes. The first thing I'm going to try BB Tubes on is an 808 style kick because I love 808s, but I really love saturating 808s. So here is the 808 without any BB Tube. Now let's bring in the BB. So we can hear it gets pretty gnarly. Let's try the other tube type. Less aggressive. Now bypass it. Let's take that low note in particular. With it. Without. So it adds a lot of harmonic content and it actually sounds really good. So I like this on an 808. Go Waves. Let's try this on the drum bus. Here's the drum bus without BB Tubes. Now let's enable BB. Oh, that's cool. So what bass relief does, it essentially doesn't pass any of the low end through the harmonic saturation, so you can go up to 100 hertz. So therefore, it's not going to saturate anything underneath 100, which is helpful considering I'm already saturating the 808. But let's just blow this thing out. Let's see what happens. Half the sample rate. So that's awesome. Like super awesome. But let's actually be a little bit more polite with it. And that's nice because now we're getting the saturation without murking up the low end. So let's bypass it. Bring it back. That definitely makes it sound bigger. And since it's clipping, I'm not peaking my channel. So saturation's awesome. And the nice thing is we also have some pre-saturation tone and post-saturation tone, which is really just a high shelf pre and post. You can go up by 9 or down by 9. I didn't touch it at all, but you know, let's just add some of the high ends in the pre. Here's some post. Take it down. Sounds great. It really, really sounds huge. So that's awesome. Let's try it on an electric bass. Here is no BB tubes on the electric bass. Here's BB tubes. So the bass relief, of course, makes a big difference here. Taking the transformer out makes it sound a little bit more anemic. I like the thickness of the transformer. Without, again, just makes it bigger. I mean, you're probably gonna hear me say the same thing over and over because it's a pretty simple plugin, but man, it's powerful and it sounds good. Let's try it on some like bluegrassy guitars. So, without the BB tubes. So on this, because this is a more delicate instrument, I do like beauty over beast as far as the saturation goes. It just doesn't get too aggressive, but it does bring everything up a bit. It really does put it more in your face. It makes it sound a little bit more 3D. It's a great sounding plugin. Once again, I said it. Let's try it on strings. Here it goes. Sounds big. And let's do that same sample rate trick, because I just want to see what happens if you distort these and play them at halftime. Awesome. Lastly, let's just try it on a vocal. And somehow I will hold your hand somehow. I won't break myself somehow. I will earn your heart somehow. Find you in the end somehow. Brings up the harmonies quite a bit. The lower harmonies, but it really sounds good. It doesn't sound muddy. It just sounds bigger and more saturated and in a really pleasing way, not in a overtly distorted way. So it's a great plugin. Let's do it again. And somehow I will hold your hand somehow. I won't break myself somehow. I will earn your heart somehow. Find you in the end somehow. I mean, now when I hear the vocals without it, they sound dull. It really does add a lot. So that's BB Tubes by Waves. It's stupidly cheap right now. It sounds shockingly good. I wish I had this plugin when I originally did this track a few years ago. And I mean, it really just sounds absolutely phenomenal. So do yourself a favor. Check it out.
Hi everybody, Adam Steele, Reaper Guy here, and today I'm going to be kind of doing a bit of a crash course with these new plugins to answer a question I get asked a lot, which is, how do I make my mixes louder? because, you know, if you just keep crushing a limiter, that doesn't sound good and that can really have a negative impact. But there are many other ways to make a mix feel fuller, bigger, and come across as louder. And one of them is by doing this, and that is having something like this Magma little tube. I've got this strapped across my drum bus, my bass bus, and my guitar bus on this particular track. So this is going to be a little bit of a whistle stop tour. You'll see how I've ended up with the sensitivity at normal on all three of these, and the output level has been turned down so that the actual level isn't louder, because as you push up the drive on these, it pushes up the volume because of distortion and kind of pushing it. So I've turned these back down, and yet it will feel louder. Here's this track without. It's kind of a bit of a shuffle. And as soon as I turned all those on, as you just saw then, I did 1, 2, 3. Suddenly, the bass felt a bit fuller, the drums were a bit more present, the guitar sits nicely, and it feels thicker, it feels fuller. And on the meters, it's no louder. And so you've got to kind of trust yourself with this kind of thing. I'm going to just turn these off again. And with the Lil Tube on the drums, I've just got a clean drum kit, just the stereo drums. Turn this on. And you can really hear on things like the kick drum there, it's crunching up quite a lot. I've got the drive quite high. But in the mix, you don't hear that crunching. It just comes across as fuller. Same with the bass. Here's the bass on its own. And then so that sounds positively distorted at that point, but context is everything. If you listen to some of the separates of like classic Motown tracks, you'll hear that the bass is really quite distorted. And it's exactly this kind of thing, because it was. I mean, this is the Amplitude version of a classic valve bass amp here, one of the old flip-top Motown style ones, run through what would have been probably a valve console. And it does the thing. And then, of course, all the guitars are very much the same. The valveness is not only bringing the lower volume parts up a little bit and saturating them, but any bits that stick out, like on the solo guitar, it's a very clean guitar. If there are any transients there, the valveness kind of clips them off a bit so they sit better in the mix. And so it's absolute magic, dead easy, and all I have to do is turn these on, turn them up, and make sure the output volume comes back down and go. And if we want to go even further, I have got the BB Tubes plugin ×5 on a more rocky kind of mix. And that is across every bus: drum bus, bass bus, guitar bus, vocals, and effects as well. And that sounds like this.
Get in line, be a man. Clash against the wall, burn and die. You fat old man. Brother.
If I turn the tubes off,
Get in line, be a man. Clash against the wall, burn and die. You fat old man.
it's a pretty decent mix, but it's missing a little something. So I turn them all on, and you will see again on the BB Tubes, and I've kind of really dialed these in, beauty and beast. So like on the bass, it's all beauty and very little beast. But you'll see on the volumes for all of them, the output, I've gone to like almost minus 6 dB on each one. Some of them are even more, -8 on the vocals, -8 on the drums, and -7 on the bass. And yet it feels louder.
Get in line, be a man.
And you can really hear how like that floor tom sounds crunchy with that, but I kind of like it. And so this is the kind of thing that can really help finish a mix off and make it sound thicker and fuller, as long as you don't go overboard with it. A couple of times I had to play with the pre and post tone here to make it sit. Like on the drums, I pushed the high end on the pre here going into the distortion and then took it back a little bit in post so that the cymbals got a little bit more valve saturation on, but then the high end didn't nasty everything up. The vocals, again, a little bit less and then kind of a push in post. But I changed that to the type B beast there because the vocals sounded like they needed more aggression and it just sits really nicely. So there you go.
Now, when you buy this, there's also the Lil Tubes. And here it is. Here is the Lil Tube. I'm going to do something. Let's find something. Let's go with a bass. So I have that bass playing along with the sub bass. Here's the two combined. So you can hear there's a lot of good stuff happening with the sub bass itself. But let's see if we can drive the live bass with the Lil Tube. Interesting. So crank the out. Add the sub bass. Turn it off.
Stop and take a second to breathe, to breathe, to breathe.
Fun. I didn't get that extra drive until I pushed the out on it. So thanks ever so much to Adam Steele and Matt Lange. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell and you'll be notified when we have more videos. And if you go to producelikeapro.com and sign up for the email list, you get a whole bunch of free goodies. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, goodbye.